What is up, you guys? It is another episode of the Sci-Fly Zone where the multiverse meets the seventh inning stretch. It's your boy Trenton and CJ, and today's destination is taking us back to Major League Baseball as we're going to be discussing something pretty controversial today. So I'm just going to get the facts right out of the gate here. So the Cleveland Guardians pitchers Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz have been formally accused by our federal government on multiple counts of wire fraud conspiracy to influence sporting contests by bribery, money laundering conspiracy, and more, as both pitchers have accepted several $1,000s in bribes and payoffs to help gamblers that they were coordinating with outside of the U.S. to win over $400,000 in bets related to pitch speed and outcome. And as a result, both pitchers from the Guardians were suspended earlier in July upon suspicion of said allegations. And earlier on Monday, Ortiz was arrested by the FBI at Boston Logan International. And I tried to find where he was flying to, but I couldn't. And I was looking because I was wondering if he was trying to flee the country, because Emmanuel Clase is already out of the country. And not much is public about his status of extradition. But if Clase were to return to his home country of the Dominican Republic, then they do have an extradition treaty with the United States. So if things were to be properly arranged, then he would be lawfully sent back here for his trial. But in Ortiz's case, I understand, like, you're already in this deep, you might as well. But, sorry, Ortiz was arrested on Sunday and he appeared in court on Monday. Allow me to correct myself. I was off by a day. But he appeared in court yesterday on Monday and he was granted release before trial upon these conditions. He has to surrender his passport. He's restricted to only traveling to the northeastern region of the continental United States. He has to post a $500,000 bail, and he cannot contact anybody related who could have been involved or affected by the allegations. And Ortiz's lawyer has stated that his client is innocent and has not done anything to improperly influence the game. However, an article from Yahoo Sports claims to have identified two separate instances that have resulted in over $60,000 won for Ortiz. And in regards to Clase, in the same article, they have identified 8 separate instances of Clase improperly influencing the game via pitch outcome. And an article from ESPN accounts one particular instance for which I'll quote, and I'll leave the link for these 2 articles in the description. But in one example cited in the indictment, Clase allegedly invited a bettor to a game against the Boston Red Sox in April and spoke with him by phone just before taking the mound. And then 4 minutes later, in the indictment, the bettor and his associates won $11,000 on a wager that Clase would toss a pitch slower than 97.95 miles per hour. So, if we're the government and we're looking at all of this information and we want to implement the worst case scenario, these guys could each face up to 65 years in prison. Each. Now, is this likely to happen? Probably not. But here is where I don't want to just ask you, CJ, but I want to ask anyone who's watching this video to consider this and ask yourself if this is right. There's a possible outcome in this trial where these guys could get a sentence that'll likely result in them dying from at least natural causes in federal prison for rigging games and sports betting. Is that right to you? And why or why not? Because this case is going to dictate how these type of situations play out moving forward, because I personally believe the MLB and the federal government are going to do whatever they can to make an example out of Emmanuel Clase and out of Luis Ortiz, because at the end of the day, they messed with the money.
You don't get it. You don't fuck with the money. You never.
And that's why it's being taken so seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the potential for 65 years in prison does seem a little bit overkill to me. I'm not going to lie. I mean, Emmanuel Clase would be 92 years old when his sentence is over. So that aspect is a little bit crazy to me. However, there's been many cases of players betting on the sport that they play, and it seems like it's only getting more and more common. Like the most recent example before this went a little bit under the radar because this guy wasn't really known as well as Clase and Luis Ortiz. But at the beginning of 2024, a young player named Tucupita Marcano, he was caught gambling, betting on games as well, and he received a lifetime ban. Now, Clase and Ortiz are found guilty. They're absolutely going to get a lifetime ban. They're never going to throw another pitch in the MLB, but that's like the least of their concerns because, like you said, 65 years is potentially what they're facing. The difference here is that Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz are not only involved in the betting of the in the games, but they are also influencing the outcome. They have direct control of what can happen in the game. Similar to like the most prominent example would be Pete Rose when he was betting on games when he was the manager. Like if you're the manager and you have control over like the lineups and control over the pitchers and who's pitching and when you take the guy out, that absolutely changes the game completely. It's a very serious case for real. And it does feel a little bit overkill, honestly. And like you said, it does feel like they're making an example of them and trying to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future, because betting on the sport that you play as a professional is illegal. And guys get a speech at the beginning of the season in the clubhouse by their managers every year. Like, you cannot bet on the sport. It is illegal. You are going to get punished. And for whatever reason, Clase and Ortiz just felt like they were going to fly under the radar, like it wouldn't come into play as much. But it's a wild case to me. The career arc of Emmanuel Clase has been so bizarre at this point. I mean, he was suspended in 2020 due to steroids. He came back and was the best pitcher, like the best closer in baseball. He had one of the best seasons that we've ever seen a reliever pitch. And back to 2023 is when these bets started happening. So just a very, very strange case.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they're trying to make an example of them. These are probably going to be some of the biggest consequences that we see in anything like this before.
Yeah, and it seems like once Luis Ortiz got himself involved with Emmanuel Clase, that's when things started to unravel a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's interesting is basically the same day as all of this is coming out, MLB announced that any and all sportsbook are to effective immediately put a $200 cap on any bets related to individual pitches, like its speed or its outcome, and barring these individual pitch bets to be a leg in any sports bet parlay. I think that's a good step, but it's came a bit too late. And
yeah.
and it just seems like you're doing damage control rather than actually caring about the actual implications of this. But another thing that I think is just like hilarious about this is, Rob Manfred recently implemented a rule change where if you pass away, you can be in the Hall of Fame. So now basically Rob Manfred removed the ineligibility of players like Pete Rose from being in the Hall of Fame and players like Shoeless Joe Jackson from being in the Hall of Fame. And they were guys who were betting games and rigging games. So what does that say about this whole thing? Because they were doing the exact same thing, but now, only because they're dead, they're able to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
unrelated, but just I'm kind of curious.
No, it's a good point for sure. Yeah, I mean, that Black Sox scandal in the early 1900s is still to this day like one of the biggest scandals in sports. Like, they literally threw the World Series. I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because not only has sports, and I guess baseball in particular, not really done much in recent years to like make sure that it's enforced, that players are still not betting on this. Obviously, you get the speech every year, but these sports networks have fully implemented betting on the games. Like, they are promoting that to fans. They want fans to bet on the games. So like, it's a little strange to me that it seems like they're doing damage control right now.
Yeah.
Because they are partially responsible. At least I believe that the league is partially responsible for what is happening. Obviously, what these guys did was, if they're found guilty, then obviously that is a stupid mistake that they made. But the way that gambling and sports betting has been introduced and morphed into the league, and the way that sports have cultivated this environment where it's encouraged to bet on games, is really disappointing. And I hope that there is a little bit less of that in the future. I hope they kind of learn from that and just not promote people to bet on games as much, because honestly, I don't really feel like it adds anything to the sport. I don't think it makes the sport better in any way. If anything, it just stresses people out more, and it can lead to fans of their team being upset about an outcome, even if it helps their team, but because it loses them money. Like, that's just a whole weird cycle that you are like dealing with there. I mean, my dad used to do like fantasy football every year with his friends, and he stopped playing fantasy football because he was drafting guys who were playing against his favorite team, and he was stuck between rooting for his team and rooting for the players that could make him money. Like it's just such a I really do feel like it has kind of not ruined the sports, but it's definitely had a negative impact on them overall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these professional leagues have had a big impact on making it as prominent as it has been.
Yeah, I mean, every single game you go to, you always see, some sort of ad, or if you're watching TV, you see some sort of ad. You can't escape the ads.
It's like I'm in a black void, trying to reach the news story. But then the next thing I know, I'm reading an ad for Geico. So I click out of that and try to read the news story, but it's not a news story. It's a slideshow. And I'm looking at the worst celebrity plastic surgery jobs ever. So of course I want to see the next slide of plastic surgery gone wrong. So I hit the arrow. But then the arrow wasn't the arrow for the next slide. It was to take me for an ad for face cream.
And I don't blame people who know Major League Baseball players, especially pitchers who have these micro bets available to them. And they're like, yo, it's just one pitch. Like, how are they going to know?
Yeah. I mean, you could basically bet on anything when it comes to at least baseball. You can bet on any outcome. You can bet on who's going to win the game, who's going to lose the game, how many RBIs is X player going to have, what's going to be the result of the next pitch, like what Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz were doing. Is it going to be a ball? Is it going to be a strike, a fastball off speed, above or below a certain mile per hour? Like, it's just so hard not to think about it. Like, if you think about, like, okay, what are the odds of something happening here? Then there's going to be somebody maybe sitting next to you who goes, oh, if I bet on that, then I'm going to make a lot of money if that happens. Like, it just, I personally don't like bet on sports and bet on games because I don't want to, and I just want to watch the game. But it's, I mean, there have been so many people who have been like reeled into sports betting because of how much advertisements and how much it's been promoted and like shoved in people's faces.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I have another question for you. So one of the charges for Clase and Ortiz is wire fraud, and that's got a standard sentence of up to 20 years, and in bad cases 30 years. So that's definitely factoring into why the sentencing could be so long. So obviously that sucks, but do you think like there's a way where MLB can still enforce and restrict this type of behavior from happening in the future, but without it having to result in guys getting possibly 60 in prison? Because like we've never really seen a case on this level before where it's been betting and rigging, since Pete Rose basically, and it's two guys.
Yeah, this is like one of the biggest betting scandals that we have probably ever seen in baseball, in sports, at least since Pete Rose. And it does carry more weight considering how they went about doing it, because they were involved with the people who were making bets, and then they were receiving money from those people as like residuals for the outcomes of it. So that definitely does expand.
And also lying about where the money came from.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, there's a bunch of different elements that have expanded this case out and made it as big of a deal as it is. I don't know what the MLB can do to crack down on this or to prevent it more, other than not promoting these betting sites as much as they are. But they have extremely lucrative deals with them, and they're making millions and billions of dollars with these deals. So I really don't see that happening.
Yeah, as we're talking about it, it's just hard for me to know which side I'm on, because as much as I don't agree with, a lot of the things that our government has created as its foundation or structure in many different sentencings, if you're living in the United States, you still have to adhere to its rules. And same thing to any other place. If you travel outside the United States and you go to France, you got to adhere to France's rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they should know that if they're doing wire fraud and they get caught, that they could get up to 20 or more years in prison along with whatever else it is. And it sucks because it wasn't even for that much amount of money relative to what their contract was. So that's why I feel like the sentence should be smaller, because the amount of actual money involved is not that much relative to how much they were making. But at the same time, I don't want them to just get off light and then have people see that and be like, oh, okay, you know what? They got off light. Maybe I can get off lighter. Like, human nature, if they can take advantage of anything that can give them a little bit of, a bump up the food chain, for lack of a better term, most people will do that.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, I totally get it. There's no way they didn't know what they were doing and how they could be punished by this. Even if they weren't fully versed on what the American law is on like wire fraud and like money laundering, they know that it's against the league. So
yeah, and they have access to lawyers. They have enough money to get a good lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that they would speak to the team's lawyer about their money laundering scheme, obviously,
Sure.
but I'm just saying you can just happen to run into the guy, catch a conversation. Like, yo, I was watching Breaking Bad. Have you heard of that show? They were doing some of this stuff, and I was just wondering, like, how realistic is it to real life? And then you can give you the rundown on the law real quick, and then you move on. You know what I mean? Don't do that. Don't do that. I do not.
This is not legal advice.
That.
Legal advice.
No. But I'm just saying there are many smarter ways that they could have gone about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the how much money was actually involved with this. The bettors themselves did make a lot of money. I think bettors who bet on the two of them made up to $450,000.
Yes. Yeah.
But
for them, it was a lot of money, but for how much money that they actually received in the bribe, not that much money.
It was a fraction of their contract. And Emmanuel Clase in particular he's on a 5-year deal at $20 million in total. It's about a $4 million average salary. He was going to make $6 million in 2026, and then he was going to make $10 million in both 2027 and 2028 if the club picked up the club option, which they absolutely would have. And there's bonuses too. He got an extra $100,000. He gets an extra $100,000 in bonuses for every All-Star selection he has. He said 3 of them. He made $100,000 last year for winning Reliever of the Year award. He received $150,000 for receiving the 3rd place finish in Cy Young, because he had one of the best relief seasons of all time. So for them to throw away, no pun intended, to throw away their careers in this way,
for 10 or 12, an extra 10 or 12 grand when they could just play the game well and get 100 or 150. I don't it's hard for me to have a bit of sympathy there, because when it's phrased that way in that context, it's very greedy. But at the same time, if, let's just say, the people that he was helping, he was just trying to low-key get them some money, then I get it. But if he's making so much money, just do a traditional wire. Why do you need to, you're making so much money, why do you need to illegally and suspiciously get more? What, so it can just go untaxed?
Yeah, I mean, it
doesn't seem worth it. But at the same time, I don't think they should go to prison long enough for them to possibly die in prison as the consequence of this. I think they were just being stupid and greedy.
Yeah, I feel I think it was very short-sighted decision making. They were just looking for the instant gratification and the instant cash that they could get.
Yeah.
But if you want an extra $10,000 to $12,000, go do a merch signing. Go sign some baseballs. Go sign some jerseys. Go interact and do these things with the team that they have set up for you guys to do. There are so many different ways to make some extra money on top of the millions that you're receiving in your contracts.
Yeah, or
So
you could even just do like a not that I'm saying that I would want him to, take money from a charity event, but if he just wanted to raise money for something in general, he can just do like a weekend charity event in the city and everyone would show up and show out, donate to that for sure.
yeah, that would have made a ton of money. That would have gotten a great outcome. So I mean, yeah, like the more you look into it, the more it just feels like a really dumb mistake, a really
Yeah.
bad mistake. And
But yeah, it's because like they were in the position to like be able to like make that mistake too, which sucks.
yeah,
It just seems like something that you could pretty easily get away with,
yeah,
but obviously they didn't do a good job.
no, not at all. However, the potential for the 65 years in prison does feel like way too much for not necessarily what the crime was, but the money. They barely got anything compared to what they were making.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do get the 65-year prison sentence, it will be partially their fault for doing what they did and for actually doing the actions. But then it's also going to be on the government, I believe, for giving them that intense of a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
I think that feels like way too much.
Yeah. And I think they were just kind of the catalyst of everything that's wrong with sports betting, like culminating into like one big event.
Yeah, 100%.
And they don't want it to get any worse from here. So that's why they're being so on the nose about it. And it doesn't help that they did the wire fraud. Like, bro.
It just stacks on top. It just makes it.
Yeah, but also,
Wait,
what does
sorry.
that say about like how harshly we treat wire fraud relative to other crimes?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, even like just in terms of like baseball players, unfortunately there's a long list of baseball players who have done some very, very disturbing, very terrible things in their private life, and they did not receive anywhere near the punishment that these guys are receiving. Like they'll get a slap on the wrist, they'll get a year or two suspension maybe, but they're not facing what these guys are facing.
Yeah. Where
in most cases.
Yeah. Where in those instances that you're talking about, people actually got hurt.
Yeah.
And they just kind of swept it under the rug and moved on. But this is going to be public and ongoing for a while just because, the circumstances.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a wild course of events. And we are definitely going to be having to keep up with it. And everybody's going to be keeping up with it because,
yeah,
like we said, this is one of the biggest scandals that we've had in recent times.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So when there is a trial and when there is an outcome or any sort of update to what's going on with this, we'll definitely let you guys know. But yeah, we just want to leave you guys with the question. How do you feel about this? Do they deserve to get the maximum sentence? And if not, what do they deserve to get? That is the question of the day and the answer of tomorrow. So that has been today's episode of the Sci-Fly Zone, where the multiverse meets the seventh inning stretch. We talk about Major League Baseball, talk about DC stuff, we talk about Marvel stuff. If you want to check out our videos, if you like Avengers Doomsday, we just did a video on that. And we also just did a video on the World Series. 3 videos, actually, on the World Series, if you want to watch those. Talking about all the games and stuff. So if you want to watch those, feel free. We're not going to stop you. And if there's anything that you want us to talk about, leave it down in the comments. But that has been the Sci-Fly Zone, where the multiverse meets the seventh inning stretch. Have a good one.